Purple Daily is daily Vikings entertainment. We just want the Vikings to win a Super Bowl before we die.
I will ride with this group.
Seriously, man. Please.
And away we go.
Okay, happy Thursday. We gave you the Thursday on a Monday this week because Thor headed down to Indianapolis for the Combine for his A job at fantasylife.com. So we'll get a full Combine recap from Thor next week. And we're basically swapping the Monday and Thursday episodes. So we're going to give you the latest Vikings news from the Combine in Indianapolis. There's a bunch of stuff here. We can even... Hell, I almost feel like on this Reckless Speculation Thursday, too, we should almost start with a couple of the things that we talked about with Doogie on the Scoop session today.
Reckless Speculation.
Some players that the Vikings have some interest in going into free agency. So we'll do all of that here after we shout out Padres. Padres, we have a couple fun events coming up, and we'll start to tell you about them soon, Padres included.
Yeah, and Padres is a fun event because it's a fun beer because all Padres does, and it's the reason why it's the official beer of the Sports Dad. All they do is beer. They're not making a lot of cocktails. They're not trying to reinvent the wheel. What they're trying to do is make the best beer possible, and guess what? Mission accomplished. I've been talking to you for quite some time about the Red, Irish Porter, English IPA. I could go down the list, but I would prefer that you try Padres for yourself. 6 packs available throughout the Metro now. Lunds and Byerly's, Kowalski's, Haskell's, Total Wine, Cub, MGM. That's right. Padres available throughout town here. Or check out their spot, which is fantastic, where we've done some PD Unplugs now, located in the old Lando Nod factory at the corner of Broadway and Central Avenues Northeast. Padres, find out why their beer is so good because all they do is beer.
Just going to throw a couple things out from that Scoop session, and then we'll also get into the Vikings once again ranking very high in player favorability. We'll get to drama about 2 reporters almost fighting each other at the Combine and some other stuff. But, Judd, how would you characterize, based on our Scoop session and even based on just some of the sleuthing texts that were being sent around in our group thread with Doogie?
Sure.
How would you care? So Doogie floated out on the Scoop that the Vikings absolutely are interested in Milton Williams, defensive tackle, pass rusher from the Eagles. We talked about Jevon Holland as a Flores guy from Miami that's the premier safety on the free agent market. Hasn't even turned 25 years old yet. Doogie said that the price tag on Byron Murphy Jr. is going to be very, very high. They're looking for like maybe a $20 million a year contract. And he's skeptical that Cam Bynum comes back, that it might get too rich. So with all of that, where do you want to start? Because we're now getting early indications of what some of these price tags might look like and who the Vikings may or may not keep.
Let's start with the reality of, I think, what's going to transpire. The legal tampering period, correct me if I'm wrong, starts on March 10th. It's a Monday. Free agency officially opens at 3 p.m. Central Time on March the 12th. As far as Bynum and Murphy go, I don't see any compelling case why they don't test the market now. So, like, could the Vikings keep one or both? Probably not both, but could they keep Murphy? Absolutely. I think it would be foolish, though, as the representative for either of those players to get to this point and now sign. So like, you can sign after you test the market, but Dukes brought up the point that it sounds like at the Combine, which I know you're going to be shocked by this, but there is tampering at the Combine, that Byron Murphy Jr.'s camp is finding out there is interest galore. And so I think the reality is that the Vikings are and have to be prepared for the fact that Bynum and Murphy both might leave. The Jevon Holland one to me is incredibly interesting because I've sort of dismissed it. Now, you've been more on the bandwagon of it being a possibility, going back to the fact that Brian Flores' staff drafted Jevon Holland for the Dolphins, where he is still playing or has played. But, the more you think about it, or at least I should say, the more I think about it, I've thought, well, Josh Metellus sort of plays that role. So does Jevon Holland come here and play the traditional safety? But there is a compelling case to be made that Metellus and Holland could be used interchangeably at times. Confusion. Long story short, I think there's a very good chance that Murphy and Bynum both walk based on what their value is going to be once they test the market. But I am more now on the Jevon Holland. I'm not saying he's going to sign with the Vikings for sure, but I think it's more of a possibility, considering the one thing that we do know, guys, is this. Brian Flores' influence on free agent signings is clearly incredibly high.
Yes. Yeah. And the 1 year he played as a rookie in that Brian Flores system, it was 2021. And a 21-year-old or maybe a 20-year-old Jevon Holland was the fourth highest graded safety in the entire league, just behind Antoine Winfield Jr. and a couple other guys, ahead of Micah Hyde at the time, ahead of Harrison Smith, who was in his prime 4 years ago. He was in terms of coverage grade as a safety, he was the number 3 highest graded coverage safety in the NFL. And he led all safeties in pass rush snaps and pressures. He had 16. He averaged a pressure per game as a safety because that's the way Brian Flores deploys his safeties. Mm-hmm. And also, just looking at the 4-year career, he is the most versatile safety you could argue in the entire league right now. I mean, he just like last year, he played about half his snaps back as a free safety, but he also played 235 snaps in the box. He played 80 snaps either as an outside edge rusher or like classified like as a defensive lineman, just up in some of those NASCAR packages, if you will. But he also played 142 snaps in the slot. So he's a guy that he's so versatile. And in 2 of his 4 years, he has been an elite graded cornerback PFF. There's been some injury stuff in there like last year. And Flores loved him going back. He also fits the profile of a younger free agent. You got to be a little careful, especially with the perimeter positions, where if a guy loses his speed around age 28, 29, now it's like, boom, Xavier Rhodes, right? But Jevon Holland doesn't even turn 25 years old until next week. So I keep bringing him up because he just makes perfect sense. Maybe they wind up liking Bynum better and Bynum is cheaper, or maybe they'd rather spend that money on Byron Murphy Jr. I don't think they're going to pay Byron Murphy Jr. $19 million a year or 17 and pay Jevon Holland somewhere in that same neighborhood. Right. And also offensive line. The trenches should be the area that you're pouring the most resources into.
I guess here's my question when it comes back to what you just broke down about Jevon Holland's usage. Is he potentially far more the answer in the slot than, because like I'm thinking safety, right? And Metellus plays in the slot as well, but traditionally what we've become used to is a cornerback is the slot guy. Are we talking about different packages though that go again outside the box, which Flores has shown in 2 years he ain't afraid to do? So am I thinking, well, they got to keep Murphy or a guy like him because he can be the slot guy, move inside. And it's Flores like, oh, no, you don't get it. I'm going to play Holland and Metellus somehow in that role. Because the one thing with Murphy is because it will behoove him to hit the market. I feel like once he does, he's probably going to get blown away with an offer that the Vikings very well might not be willing to match, Declan.
I have very much high trepidation of paying Byron Murphy Jr. after one really good year. And I think that's what worries me here. And good for him. Look, he's hitting the open market. He has a chance to get a big bag. I don't fault him for wanting game-changing and life-changing money. But if I'm the Vikings and I have priority needs on the trenches side of the ball on offense and defense, I'd much rather, if I'm going to overpay for something between Murphy, Bynum, and Jevon Holland, I am much more likely to give it to Holland. And Bynum, we'll see what happens there. If he also wants the game-changing, life-changing money, again, that's a completely different avenue, not what we're talking about here. But I'd rather give it to Holland, who has a much better body of work than what he's been able to do as opposed to Byron Murphy, who's had one good year.
Yeah, I think the question off that would be, let's say, because I have the same trepidation about Byron Murphy. He's still young enough too, where he's kind of like he merged into his prime maybe the last couple of years. So I think it's possible that he just reached a new level last year, and now this is what he's going to be. He's going to be a top 15 cornerback in the league the next 3 years. But it is like he had one big season after 5 years of kind of up and down, and PFF didn't really love him as much with the Cardinals in the first year with the Vikings. But if you're going to pay a safety, and this would apply to paying Cam Bynum too, if you're going to pay a safety 13, 14, 15 million, $19 million a year, I don't think you're going to then pay a cornerback. I think you would then go like maybe a B-level free agent cornerback, trust that Mekhi Blackman, who Doogie reported full clearance, by the way. Mekhi Blackman goes into the offseason, full clearance coming off the injury. And then drafting a cornerback would be high on the priority list, first round or third round. I'll throw another nugget in here for you guys. So in terms of slot coverage among the 41 qualified safeties that played in the slot. So this is safeties covering in the slot last year in the NFL. Josh Metellus had the fourth most snaps of any safety in the slot. And he was 13th out of 41 in passer rating against. Very good. Mm-hmm. Cam Bynum played 109 snaps slot coverage. He was 37th out of 41 in passer rating. When he played in the slot and quarterbacks targeted him, they had a 142.5 passer rating against Cam Bynum. Jevon Holland, 10th. Better than both Metellus and way better than Cam Bynum in 87 coverage snaps out of the slot. So I think you can definitively say that Jevon Holland is a better player than Cam Bynum and also a higher end player than Cam Bynum and better in the slot than Cam Bynum if that's what he's asked to do with the Vikings. But is it worth paying him maybe $5 million extra per year, taking away from other areas of need? But that is something to watch. I think they're going to get like one of those three players in free agency and then devote the rest of their resources to defensive pass rushers in the trenches and maybe a right guard that you can trust for the next few years.
If I may, it feels like Metellus, if we can use a cross Minnesota sport comparison, Metellus is very much their Willie Castro. What the Twins use Willie Castro for is this in a similar vein of what Josh Metellus does. Now, I think Metellus might make a bigger impact and has more importance to that defense than like what Willie Castro means on a 26-man roster to the Twins. Some of those grades that you throw out on Metellus, like the versatility there is what makes him so special. So you might see some grades that are like, oh, that's like average at best. That shouldn't make much sense, but he's a linchpin to what they're able to do. And again, I just think what Holland's been able to bring in his career with the numbers also backing it up, if I'm going to give the big time money, I definitely lean Holland.
Now, what's intriguing here, too, though, as we discuss this and the possibilities of who they might sign and pursue is also this team needs to get younger. Like, that's the thing is this team was a very old team. Now, at some key positions, they weren't. But if you look at the average age that they went into last season with, they were long in the tooth. The interesting thing is Jevon Holland and Milton Williams both are coming out of their first contract. Mm-hmm. So, like, if you could lock them up, what you're getting is you're getting two guys who are in their primes. Milton is 25, Jevon is 24, as we just discussed. So I do think that there is some intrigue here also in reducing the average age here.
100%,
because
yeah.
At some point in time, like, the problem is this. So you've missed on draft picks, right? And that's cost you because you're aging out in some ways because you've had to go get guys, veteran guys, to replace guys that, the Booths of the world who should be starting and are now not on your roster. But because you've got some cap space, if you could now make that up by getting guys that you probably should have drafted. And here's where I think there's some pushback of, well, yeah, but you screwed up. Well, yeah, but if you had drafted correctly and gotten guys going into their second contract, you would have to pay them. So it's not like, if you got Jevon Holland, he'd be cheap. No, he's going to leave the Dolphins because he's going to be expensive. So I think that there's a compelling case to be made here that if you are going to pursue guys, it makes a lot of sense to pursue guys coming out of contract one in their mid-20s to get younger and have guys going into the prime of their careers instead of sort of awarding them for their names, but they're 29 or 30 years old.
Yep. Love the 25-year-old bin of either retaining in the case of, I guess Byron Murphy is a little older than that, but yeah, just the Vikings actually had one of the oldest rosters in the league. So if you can get younger and you can get ahead of the age curve thing while you go into the JJ McCarthy era, could be good. So keep an eye on those names. Okay, Vikings news. Next item. NFL team report cards came out from the NFL Players Association, where they basically survey every locker room in, I don't know, like 11 or 12 different categories. And they tell you who the best organizations are overall and in each category, and who the dumpster fire organizations are. The Vikings have traditionally graded very highly here, and this year was no different. The Vikings were given the number 2 overall organizational grade in the entire league, behind only the Miami Dolphins. The categories were head coach, owner, strength coaches, weight room, training staff, training room, food and cafeteria, locker room, team travel, nutritionist and dietitian, and treatment of families. I'm just going to fly through this here. Well, I'll give you the overall. I'll give you the Dolphins were number 1, Vikings number 2, Falcons 3, Raiders 4, Chargers 5. The 5 worst franchises from 32 working our way up are the Arizona Cardinals, the New England Patriots with like a 40-year-old team plane that has ashtrays in the armrest still.
Yeah, you want to smoke?
Awesome.
You can smoke.
Yep, love that.
And no Wi-Fi, by the way. So the Patriots are, I'm sure Belichick loved that, man. Like, yeah, you sit there, you raw dog this flight for 5 hours. You sit there and you stare at the back of your seat and think about the game plan. Patriots 31, Browns 30, Jets 29, Steelers 28. The Steelers, man, so they love Mike Tomlin, but they hate pretty much everything else. So let's go through some of these. You guys comment as you will here. So the Vikings received A+ for treatment of families, A- for food and dining area. The lowest grade was actually B+ for nutritionist and dietitian.
Yeah. How about that?
Still,
like if you have like
No,
the
B+,
amazing,
right?
if you have the amazing food, it's kind of hard to like maybe balance out some of the nutrition and dietitian stuff.
Well, let's see. Specifically in the food dining area, it says the freshness of the food was 9 out of 10. The common request from players is for more variety in their food options. But then for like specifically nutritionist and dietitian, 83% of players report that they get individualized nutrition plans. So 17 players feel like they could use a plan or a roadmap. I don't know.
It's still a B+.
Let's fix it.
Good. Yeah, it's a good grade.
Locker room, A+. Training room, A-. Training staff, which was a B last year, and they revamped some things.
They made some changes, yeah.
Now it's an A. Weight room, A-. Strength coaches, A. Team travel, A. Head coach, A+. 94% of Vikings players feel Kevin O'Connell is efficient with their time. The players feel O'Connell is highly receptive to locker room feedback on the team's needs. So A+ for Kevin O'Connell. And then ownership, A+. The Wilf's average rating for perceived willingness to invest in the facilities is ranked 2nd out of 32 owners. The players feel that the Wilfs significantly contribute to a positive team culture, and players feel like the Wilfs are extremely committed to building a competitive team. So that's how you get to the second most favorable franchise in the NFL, which bodes well going into free agency, by the way.
Right. Well, so this started, and I think this year the respondents were 77% of the Players Association. This started in 2022, and the Vikings were first. The last 2 years, the Dolphins have been first. The Vikings have been second. And, guys talk. So I don't think that this is like, I don't think that a guy is going to sit down and say, oh, I didn't realize this about the Vikings. I'm signing there. But I think this is where the term, as overused as it might be sometimes in sports, culture matters. Like, they have built a culture that is great. I would be curious now, I'm willing to bet if this had started in 2020, that Zim's rating wouldn't have been an A+. And so I think it's incredibly important. Now, the Wilfs have done, a really good job since the day that they got here in resetting things. And I mean, they inherited a team with Red McCombs that operated on the cheap every single day. They didn't even trim the shrubs behind Winter Park. They practiced by a woods. Kenny Irvin once picked off a ball flying into the woods and basically cut himself on a tree branch. And so the advancements made in the last 20 years by that team, going from a rickety old broken down Winter Park to TCO, going from the Metrodome, because when you're talking about like the locker room, that's TCO. That's not
correct.
US Bank Stadium, which is absolutely gorgeous as well. So if you want to look at a team that has its act together, it's the Vikings. But I do think that O'Connell and Kwesi as well also have set a culture that is so much improved. And we can complain about guys being soft now, blah, 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 but that's how they are. And so what O'Connell brings as far as being willing to listen or accommodate families and all of that stuff becomes incredibly important. So long way of saying that the Vikings are an incredibly attractive option for a lot of reasons. And we should appreciate that, because the fact that this team has won a lot through the years, not always reflective of an ownership group that was nearly as good as this one is.
My favorite note from this entire survey, this doesn't relate to the Vikings, was from the Falcons, where they said players identified 2 key improvement areas. 1, the need for at least 1 additional physical therapist in the training room, and better ventilation in the new locker room bathrooms. So the new stadium in Atlanta, clearly someone's dropping bombs, and it's not being ventilated properly pre or post game. That's got to be brutal. Can you imagine?
So that's for their stadium or their practice facility?
I think it's practice facility.
It might be their facility.
Flowery Branch.
But I can't imagine like having a rough day of practice, or even obviously if this is the actual stadium, a rough game, and someone just goes to the bathroom to do their business, and then you gotta just be trapped in that. It's
being pumped through the vents actually into the rest of the building.
We're talking about like guards and centers and tackles and defense. Those men are huge.
Yeah, their job. I mean, it's like a bear in there. Yeah, it's bad. Yes. So there's a lot to unpack here. Just for fun, the teams that graded their head coach the worst were the Bears, Jaguars, fired, and the Browns. So Browns players very low on Kevin Stefanski. Teams that graded their ownership the worst, the only F was the Jets, which makes total sense. Just an absolute disorganized mess. And then there were 5 Ds or D minuses for the Panthers. Tepper is a disaster, just firing everyone all the time. Cardinals, Patriots, Steelers. Patriots and Steelers regarded widely as like these stable, successful franchises, but
older guys though. The Rooney's, Kraft's got to be in his 80s. Is that correct?
Yep. And then the Tampa Bay Buccaneers also with a D+. So, yeah.
Do the Cardinals still charge their players to eat? I seem to recall the last survey. I believe that there was a complaint that the Cardinals cafeteria charged.
Sounds right.
Which is the Bidwells, which is no surprise either.
Yeah. So they've got the food dining area. It doesn't say specifically, but yeah, that was definitely a thing. Very cheap thing. So okay, Vikings news continues here. After we remind you guys that in a week and change, so March 10th is when tickets become available for I guess it'll be the 4th annual Purple Daily Draft Party. And we are back at the Fillmore once again. We loved it so much last year. It was such a vibe when the Vikings drafted J.J. McCarthy. We had to go back. So Thursday, April 24th, 7 p.m. is the start of the draft and the draft party. And mark your calendars. General admission and VIP tickets become available at 10 a.m. Central Time on March 10th, so a week from Monday. ScoreNorth.com/draft. ScoreNorth.com/draft. Presented by Standard Heating and Air Conditioning, which Dex can tell you guys more about right now, actually.
Yeah, shout out to Standard for helping sponsor our draft party. And also, even though we've had some warmer weather here in the Twin Cities, Luckily, we did have some of those nasty cold spells. Right now at Standard, now is the time to score big on home comfort. You can save up to $7,500 on a mini split ductless system or a high efficiency heat pump combo with Standard heating and air. So when you're looking at that furnace and you don't know what the heck you're looking at, that's why Standard comes out there to make sure that furnace is in tip-top shape. Plus, if this ground is thawed for good, you got to make sure that air conditioning is working well too. So go to standardheating.com to make sure everything is working appropriate with that furnace and future air conditioning. Go to standardheating.com to learn more.
And a shout out to North American Banking Company. Whether you are looking for a better banking experience for the basics, the checking and savings, or whether you're looking for something bigger like help financing a home, a car, a new business that you're setting up, North American Banking Company, a Minnesota-based banking company, can help you out. 6 locations in the Twin Cities: Maple Grove, Roseville, Shoreview, Hastings, Woodbury, and 50th in France. In getting to know the people at NABC, I've noted a few things. Very friendly, knowledgeable people, very much available to help you plan and map out the future. And they put a huge emphasis on the safety and security of accounts as well, cutting-edge online tools. So to find out more and maybe start your process transitioning to just a better banking experience, go to nabankco.com/Mackey to learn more. That's nabankco.com/Mackey. Member FDIC, equal housing lender. Okay, the latest on Sam Darnold, and it goes in a roundabout way through the Matthew Stafford drama, because it feels like I say the latest on Sam Darnold and bring up Matthew Stafford because it feels to me, and maybe you guys disagree, that the Stafford domino has to fall first, and then the Darnold market can officially take shape.
Probably, yeah.
Like, okay, the Rams, do you need a quarterback or not? I don't know. They're trying to figure out if they're trading Stafford, right?
Yeah, and I think that if you're a team that's going to be after Darnold, I think that your priority, if you can do it first, is Stafford.
Yeah, couple years, ride out the last couple years of his career. Yep. So with that, we had absolute cinema at the Starbucks in that convention center yesterday.
Yes.
So it started off with Jordan Schultz Report on Twitter. He's an NFL insider from Fox Sports, previously Bleacher Report. Also, the son of longtime former Starbucks CEO Howard Schultz. And he tweeted out, by the way, Jordan Schultz is a fast rising, he's excellent, and he breaks a ton of news. Very plugged in. And he said, sources, Raiders minority owner Tom Brady recently hosted Rams quarterback Matthew Stafford at his home in Montana, where they spent time together and went skiing. Brady has been actively trying to convince Stafford to join the Raiders, and discussions are ongoing. Several teams are interested in Stafford if the Rams decide to move him, with Las Vegas believed to be the most aggressive suitor. So not only is he saying, hey, these guys spent time together in Montana, but Brady is actively trying to get Stafford to ask for a trade to the Raiders, and the Raiders are super aggressive in this endeavor. Well, our guy Tom Pelissero and Ian Rappaport from NFL Network came in with a follow-up to this. Pelissero said, reached for comment about an internet rumor that Tom Brady hosted Matthew Stafford on a recruiting visit in Montana. Brady's longtime agent, Don Yee, told me, quote, I know that reporters sometimes make mistakes in their haste, but this story is inaccurate. And Ian Rappaport came in and said, Brady and Stafford, like many other high-profile people, both own houses in the same ski community. They ran into each other at a ski resort in their shared community with their third homes or whatever. The meeting, unplanned, was not extensive or in-depth and did not include Brady hosting or recruiting Stafford, despite reports saying otherwise. Jordan Schultz took issue with the dismissal and the condescension here. And so he went right up to Ian Rappaport, according to multiple accounts, at the Starbucks, I think in that convention hall, right?
Yeah, I've been to the
and
Starbucks
he confronted
we
him.
got to talk.
Accosted him is how Pro Football Talk put it.
Was talking to an agent. He basically came up and said, we got to talk. And Rapp's like, about what? No, we don't. God,
So, okay, I think this is extremely transparent. The Raiders are desperate for a quarterback. The Raiders in Las Vegas, they've been an embarrassment since they moved into this new palace in this poppin' city, right?
Right.
They're in a division with Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert and hell, Andy Reid and Jim Harbaugh and even Sean Payton and Bo Nix are now on the rise in the division, made the playoffs.
Yep.
The Raiders have almost $100 million in cap space. Yes, they are interested in Matthew Stafford. Like, of course they are. Mm-hmm. And so to pour cold water on this and to make it seem like it's all just a coincidence that these two guys were enjoying a weekend together in their lavish ski resort town.
Right.
I believe Jordan Schultz is reporting on this.
Well, hell yeah. What do you think? They just ran exactly.
Now, Matt, good to see you, buddy.
Let's get the gondola.
Yeah.
Let's go here.
Let's go through what's going on here too, because part of it drives me crazy. First of all, the league doing everything it can now to protect Brady is so annoying. Yeah. Well, he can't, he's going to be Fox's top guy, but he can't go to the production meetings with players and coaches until the Super Bowl comes, in which case he can. And now this, Tom Brady might just be, and he's new right now, but he might just be a crappy executive. You can't, it's one thing for the Rams to say, hey, Matthew, your representatives, for instance, at the Combine, can go explore this, right?
Which they did. They gave him that permission.
And they did give them that permission. That does not then entitle the player, though, to go hang out at a dude's home and go skiing with him. That's still tampering. And Brady is, and I think his first year in the broadcast booth showed this, and it's not surprising now. Brady is very entitled. Like he's very entitled to, well, I'm Tom Brady. I can do this and I can do that. And I'm going to be a really good broadcaster, despite the fact I'm really not. And now this step is the hubris of this move. And then for the NFL's media arm to protect it. And, I'm sorry. I don't care what Donnie Yee tells me. I don't care what anyone tells me. You're right, Phil. This didn't happen. So it's incredibly annoying. And quite frankly, here's where I really object. If I'm the Vikings, a team that we talk about every day on this show, I'm really annoyed because now it creates this tampering situation with Stafford, which is gumming up the works on Darnold.
Correct. And that's where it comes full circle for Vikings fans here is Darnold is waiting in line at the ski resort while Stafford tries to get on the lift. It's like, I got to wait for him to go down the hill before I can go down the hill.
I just want some boots. He's at the rental place, just like, I just want my boots. I'm
stuck on the chairlift. I'm stuck up here on the chairlift. Can somebody turn the chairlift back on?
He's never skied before. He's never been a high-profile free agent. Pizza.
Sam, stop French frying.
Stafford. The known Stafford suitors include obviously the Rams, the Giants have been reported, and the Raiders. The Raiders. Why wouldn't it's? And you just laid out all the tampering nuances here. This is a classic Tom Brady is overstepping. He's tampering. He's going beyond the scope of what the NFL rules allow. Even when you give an agent permission to explore someone's value, that does not mean that a partial owner of a team can hang out with, and they can frame it as like, wow, just a couple rich guys up in the mountains. No, the Raiders literally don't have a quarterback right now. And they're drafting 6th, so they're not guaranteed to get one of the top 2 guys in the draft. And quite frankly, the Raiders, with a 73-year-old head coach, Chip Kelly, who's an experienced veteran offensive coordinator, and Tom Brady coming in here, I don't think they want to wait 3 years to be good. Matthew Stafford is an instant turnkey, relevant quarterback to put you back in the playoff hunt. So, and of course, because this leaked out now, people with agendas have to come out and no, my client, Don Yee, my client he's not tampering at all. They're just a couple rich guys hanging out. It's so transparent what's happening here.
Right. And if I'm the Vikings, I'm pissed. Like if I'm the Vikings, I'm like, you got to get this done, settled. And it can't just be because this is going to drag it on. Right. And yes, Stafford is turnkey and Stafford is unknown. Like Darnold, great year. For the most part, great year, but he's not a known. Like if you give me a choice, hey, try and win in 2025 with Stafford or Darnold, I'm going to say, well, Darnold is a little bit of an unknown still. I like him, but I don't, but but Stafford in his last couple of years probably at least gives me a bona fide. I know exactly what he's done. He's won a Super Bowl. So yeah, the Raiders are, if this is possible, the Raiders are about to become or have become more annoying than they were previously. And they were just annoying because they sucked and they're, Mark Davis is a buffoon. Well, now it's worse because they still sort of suck. Brady's entitled and they're gumming up the works of things.
Here's what I want to know. And I know this probably honestly puts more fuel on an actual tampering charge. But as a snowboarder, were they at Big Sky or were they at Whitefish Resort? And then also, how do we get... I would love to know if, the insiders are, calling ski rental places of, both these, hey, tell me, was it Brady? Was he skiing or was he snowboarding? What was Stafford doing there? What
are there there's got to be there's no way they are skiing with the public, right? There's got to be private.
I don't know. I mean, I think they actually could be skiing in the. I mean, you are so bundled up and covered that I think it's pretty hard to spot unless you're sitting in the chalet with your helmet off and your hat off and oh my God, that's Matthew Stafford. I think it'd be pretty difficult to place someone when you're in a ski suit and all the gear up and stuff.
I just have a hard time believing Tom Brady's waiting in line for 20 minutes for a ski lift. There's
I'm sure
there's rumors in LA that there's underground freeways for rich people for celebrities that you never spot a celebrity on the freeway because they're never stuck in traffic. Because there's got to be some private ski areas for guys like that.
Well, but the funniest thing too is if Matthew Stafford is if you are aiming, which is fine, if you are aiming for him to be your starting QB this coming season, the last place I want him is on skis.
Oh, you're just worried he's going to get hurt.
Yes, I don't want him to break his freaking leg. Tom Brady, who cares? He breaks his leg, he's done playing. But Matthew Stafford, guys have it, I believe, in contracts that they can't do things like ski during their careers because it is reckless because you can get hurt you can tear your knee.
I should have known the don't do anything except sit on your couch. Judd was about to come
go work out. Go work out. You can go work out all you want. You can drive around. I'm not saying you can't do day-to-day things. I'm just saying skiing unnecessarily dangerous if you're my quarterback.
Yeah. So Stafford, figure it out. Just tell us where you're going to wind up playing football so we can all move into the Sam Darnold season here. And if you could do it before the franchise tag deadline on Tuesday, that would be super helpful. Be great.
Yeah.
Okay. The Vikings also met with a bunch of college defensive tackles yesterday. The top of the draft class is filled with interior defensive linemen. And I really love this nugget from the Athletics' Alec Lewis. So he put together a list of the 10 highest paid defensive tackles in the NFL. So the premier dudes who get pressure from the interior, the Chris Joneses of the world, and where each of those 10 were drafted. Now, the Vikings have the 24th overall pick, but 7 of the 10 current highest paid defensive tackles in the NFL were drafted in the first round before the 20th pick. And the other 3 guys are Chris Jones was a second-round pick. Matt Abuike was a third-round pick, and then Aleem McNeil was a third-round pick as well. Otherwise, Christian Wilkins and Quinnen Williams and Jeffrey Simmons, DeForest Buckner, etc., were all top 19 overall picks. So so obviously this is a really, really rich defensive tackle draft class. So this might be a year where, you could get the 5th guy off the board late in the first round, and he's still going to be a stud for you. But it's a position the Vikings have not targeted in the first round since 2013 with Sharif Floyd. And I think before that, it was Kevin Williams, right?
Right, Kevin, yeah.
Yeah, and that worked out very well, despite the fact that they missed their pick and took him 2 picks after their pick. And Sharif Floyd, by the way, was a very good pick. If he doesn't get hurt and then the surgery is not butchered, I think that guy has a great career. I really liked him a lot.
Yeah. So just interesting data there that if you want one of these dudes, it's kind of tough to usually go get one in the third round. You want to hunt for one in the first round.
Now the class is deep enough that I think that at 24, if you stick and pick, you could probably get one.
Yep.
Like
that's
it's a
accurate.
deep enough class there where you probably would have an option at a pretty good one. But again, the question is, do you stick and pick? Do you trade back? Like that's the thing here. And that's where the Darnold thing being resolved ASAP is going to help people like us have an idea. Because if you franchise him and trade him, now you probably are more inclined, I would think, to stay at 24 because you would add, let's just say for the sake of the conversation, a 3rd round pick.
Yep. A couple of nuggets for you guys here. Vikings news. We mentioned this briefly on the Scoop with Doogie, but BetMissouri.com has put together the latest Trey Smith free agency odds. One of the main points of free agency conversation right now is Chiefs offensive lineman Trey Smith, and BetMissouri.com has odds projecting his next team. So I'll give you the percentages. The field or the Chiefs are 40%. So like he either goes back or some other random team, 40%.
Okay.
Titans 15%, Vikings 13%, and then Bears, Texans, Patriots are the next 3 teams. So the Vikings have the 3rd best odds to sign Trey Smith behind the Chiefs, the Titans, and they're the Vikings sit. Be about $20 plus million a year to go get him.
Yeah, exactly. I saw a report, I think it was yesterday, that there is a hope that the Chiefs will know for sure, or that we'll have some closure from their end by about Tuesday. Because and that's another one too, though. If you're Trey Smith and you've taken it this far, do you re-sign next week or do you just hit the market?
Yeah.
Like you're bound to get an offer that, if it's not as great as you think, it's still going to probably exceed what the Chiefs, are thinking right now. I guess I don't understand, unless you're an older player who's in love with a certain team. I don't understand why you would take it this far and not just go through to explore your options. Because there's always a team that seems to come through for a guy like Trey Smith with just a ridiculous. It's like, oh my God, okay, I'll take that. So I would be a little bit surprised if a guy like that decided next week I'm staying in KC, unless KC slapped the franchise tag on him. But I think they've got a lot of contracts up, so I think it would be somewhat prohibitive for them to retain other players if they decided to franchise Trey Smith.
Yep. That's an already very expensive offensive line they have there in Kansas City. So, all right, that's there's a few more nuggets that we will push into tomorrow's Feedback Friday, and we already have like 3 or 4 juicy anonymous emails from Purple Daily listeners on the ground gathering information from their brothers, cousins, friend who knows a security guard who works at the facility. So we've got some juicy stuff on Feedback Friday tomorrow. Recklessly speculative. He's the sports dad, Judd, executive producer, Declan. I am Phil. And we just want the Vikings to win a Super Bowl before we die here on Purple Daily.